to be here.
Would you be able to give a brief introduction to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Heidi Physick. I currently work for Oodle Finance. I'm their Chief People Officer. And I'm coming up on 3 years with that organisation.
Very good. How did you initially get into the industry? Like, what motivated you?
That's a really interesting question, actually. When I came out of university, I did history for my degree, so that's got nothing to do with anything. But now it's really interesting because I find other people who did history for a degree, and I'm always like, let's be a club. How did we get here? What happened? But I came in via recruitment, and I did that in a number of different organisations at first, in-house recruitment. And eventually I joined a company called HML, the Home Loan Management, who are part of the Skipton Building Society. And that was my first step into financial services. And really at that point for me, it was about the job as much as anything. I was really interested in this organisation and what they did. But I think through that, I sort of fell in love with FS. And largely I've worked in FS ever since then. So I think the things that I really like about it are it's really fast paced.
Yeah.
Every business is different, every offering is different, how it's funded is different, its customers are different. It's complex, you've got some big stuff that you need to get your head around. And it's challenging, it's dynamic. I like lots of variety, so I hate being bored. And FS is the perfect place to be if you want, lots of change and lots of stuff going on.
I was going to say, it surely keeps you on your toes with
Absolutely.
the evolving regulations and...
Absolutely, yeah. When you're working in that regulated environment, then there's always something going on, and I really like that kind of interaction, particularly for my role, not just with the business, but then with risk and compliance and those pieces. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and of course with the world of AI and evolving technology influences, how's that impacting you?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I feel like everybody's talking about right now. And the challenge is then to get right down to what is the advantage for your business right now. So we've got an AI innovation group set up to really start to look at that. And definitely, even in my role and in my team, ChatGPT is now, if I'm going to have to write something, I think, well, it can write it first. It can write it first, and then I'll look at it and go from there. So those things are definitely coming in and becoming more part of the norm. I think the challenge is, even as we kind of see out there, just in business in general, in the wider industry, is to find the role of AI in your business.
Yeah.
And so that's the piece we're really looking at and trying to do the right thing. So whether that's AI to help our technology coders to look at their code and review their code, or whether it's in that customer interaction, it's really about finding the right route for your organisation, I think.
Yeah. So positive impact for the business.
Absolutely.
And business outcomes.
Absolutely, and not just doing it because it's a shiny new thing that's out there. You've got to make it practical and specific.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds really interesting. A lot of people are talking about the AI world and the influence on it.
I think it's every other webinar I see at the moment is the impact of AI, and it's definitely something that we can think about. But I also think you've got to, I'm certainly not working at Barclays, or a NatWest where you've got sort of huge resources and a massive customer base. You've got to bring it back down and make it specific for an organisation that is 400 people, and what does that look like for an organisation like us?
Yeah. If I can just ask you a little bit more about your journey to CPO, which you're at the moment within Oodle, what did that look like for you initially?
So I think I had quite an untypical journey to CPO, and I often talk about that to kind of younger people in my team and about what that looks like, because I took my time. I started out in recruitment, and I did recruitment, managing recruitment teams in-house for organisations through to sort of my late 20s. And then after I had my daughter, I pivoted, I went part-time, I took a step into organisational development and people projects, and spent some time running leadership development courses and looking at specific business issues that were coming out at the time, so attrition and regulation and working practices. So a really kind of different place to sit in. And then I took on a HR business partnering role, and I really enjoyed that. That was a spark moment for me where I felt like I'd found a role that was my home. But I didn't come into that job again probably until I was about 32. And really found that interaction with the business on a day-to-day basis was something that I really enjoyed. And I continued in that role, so I did a stint with Virgin Media, and then I went to Barclays, and in both of those organisations I was doing a very independent business partnering role. And there's something so wonderful about sort of being in charge of your own little bit, you know, it's a lovely feeling. But at the same time, I began to kind of buffer up against this frustration that I wanted to do things, but there was always a head office somewhere that I needed to go and work with and convince. And that was the next push factor that got me into leading in HR rather than just being a kind of standalone contributor in a business partnering role. I knew that I wanted that opportunity to make change and make a difference. And I think I wanted to do things my way as well. More autonomy. I had a vision of how I felt work could look, particularly as I had often worked in large operational or contact center environments where you've got a lot of people doing the same job. And I was really interested in how do you make their day-to-day working experience more human, more feeling valued and listened to, rather than sort of feeling like they were part of quite a big machine almost. And so that was the thing that really spurred me to move on. So I was lucky enough to become head of people and then HR director for Arrow Global, and spent some time with them, which was absolutely wonderful. I got to lead teams across Europe, Northern Europe, which was wonderful, you know, when you're trying to dealing with all of those different cultures coming together, the different legislations, the different regulation. It was so interesting. And so I really enjoyed doing that, and then moved into Oodle, where I am now as CPO.
It's I think it's quite a good message for younger. You mentioned younger females in your team as well. Yeah. That the trajectory you can carve it out for yourself.
You really can, and we can get very focused. And I talk to people who are very focused on. You know, it's this, and then it's BP, senior BP, and then it's head of, and you can say you can afford to slow down and broaden out and really experience all that this career has to offer you. It's a great opportunity. One of the things that I really value now that I am in a leadership position is most of the roles underneath me I will have done or touched on at some point, and I can bring that into the conversations with my team, and that is really helpful. But it also helped me to find the role that really suited me, and I really value that. So I think, you know, take that moment to pause and, you know, spread out a bit. Even think about going out into the business and then coming back in again. Like, what a great opportunity to experience what it's like on the other side for a period of time. So I really encourage that. I think it's really helpful.
Yeah. And like you said, there is the HR business partner role that you felt it just clicked with you.
Yes.
And I think that's that's a really good point. It's where you find almost your passion and
Absolutely.
what you really want to continue doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ultimately, yours is a people-focused role.
It is.
And it's relatable then to others in your team.
Absolutely. Whereas, I can see some people who get so sparked by development and the training side and the talent side, or the people who love reward and really enjoy that kind of more analytical role. You can see that there are niches and specializations, or if you're a bit like me and you enjoy a bit of everything, then business partnering is a great option.
Yeah. And just touching on the leadership role, what is your leadership style, would you say?
So I have a very kind of practical and pragmatic side to my day-to-day work, and also how I lead. So I always want to think about, well, what's the impact that this is going to have? Is it going to be of value? And how are we going to implement it, and to see those things. And so I very much work on that basis with my team, but at the same time I'm very focused on the human side of what we do. So both in my interactions with the business and my interactions with my team, I want to build an organisation where people feel valued and listened to, that they can see the connection between their role and what the organisation is trying to do, and that in general they enjoy coming to work. So I want that for my own team, but I want it for the people in the organisation as well. And that is probably what drives me the most, I would say, and really colours my leadership. I'm a very empathetic person. That always comes across whenever I do any sort of psychometrics of any kind. I feel a lot, and so I bring that to my work. And actually that's really important for me, because when I first started out, 20 plus years ago, there was a sense that to get on, you had to be quite assertive and bold and take on some of those slightly more masculine tendencies to really get ahead. And I'm very much, I feel things, I'm reflective, I'm a bit of an introvert, but those are all the things that are me. Those are the things that I want to lead with. And actually what's been really great is to see how that has changed over time. And I've had the opportunity to then see women do it differently and say, there's space for us. There's space for us to bring our style and our way of doing things and our strengths, to this leadership role. And that is very much what I'm trying to do now in that role, and encourage other women to do as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We've touched on it with some of the other ladies that we've filmed, and it's really, really key, I think, when we look at TradFi and what the industry used to be like and how far we've come, really in the message that we're getting across and how I think we're delivering it. One rule isn't the same for everybody.
No.
The industry has changed.
Yes.
So what do you think has been maybe the biggest change from your perspective, or the biggest impact where we've had women in leadership roles like yourself?
So I think there's a change of tone, and I have witnessed the industry to go from something that was incredibly results focused. Obviously it still is, but it was that above anything else. And I have often found myself partnering with collections teams, so teams working with customers who have fallen behind with payments. And 20 years ago, that was a very transactional process about, you owe us money and you need to pay it back. And where the regulation has changed and where the industry has changed is to really bring in the sense of the fact that that customer is a person, that life happens to customers all the time, redundancy and divorce and illness and all of those things happen. And we want to work with that customer through that process. And that, I feel, is one of the biggest journeys that I've personally witnessed in financial services, is to really change that round. And when I listen to customer calls now, and we have that as part of the way that we do things at Oodle, and when you hear a customer who's in financial difficulty have a conversation with one of their agents that is empathetic, calm, structured, helpful, that customer comes off the end of that call and feels as though they've been listened to and someone has helped them to find a solution that keeps them in their car, ultimately, which is such a hugely important thing for someone in their life. That is such a huge change, and one that I think is really valuable, so that we are seeing not just our colleagues as humans, but our customers as well, and really trying to work with them through the life cycle of their loan.
Yeah, and we saw that with the consumer duty,
absolutely,
regulations,
absolutely,
a lot of other regulatory changes that
yes.
we were talking about
yes,
earlier.
Yes.
From your perspective as well, Heidi, clearly as CPO, appreciate there's lots of policies that you'll be involved in, changes within an organisation. How do you approach more of the DE&I policies within Oodle? I mean, it's part and parcel of why we've done this series.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I joined Oodle, I was really lucky to join at the same time as our new chief exec, Richard Gaskin, and one of the really wonderful things was that he made a decision early on to bring more female leaders onto the ExCo. And I feel so lucky now that I get to be on an ExCo of fabulous human beings, but I also have Jess Bates, who's our Chief Operating Officer, and Kira Raisin, who's our Chief Commercial Officer. And that makes such a huge difference, because I have spent a lot of my career being the only female on an ExCo or a leadership team. And it's really wonderful to then be in a position where there's more than just you. And what we've tried to do is then to replicate a kind of balanced gender representation through the organisation. So our senior leadership team is pretty much 50-50, male-female, and we are replicating that through the lower levels of the organisation as well. Now, it's something that you've just got to be on top of constantly, because you've got people leaving the organisation when it's right for them, you've got people joining the organisation, you've got people moving through the organisation, and so that is constantly fluctuating, and we really have to sort of keep an eye on it and think about where we're recruiting and who we're bringing into the organisation. We've got a really fabulous gender network. It's one of 5 DEI networks that we have in the organisation. And they really help us to think about what are the kinds of things that are barriers for women in the organisation, and also things that women are looking for. And they've really helped us to have some great conversations, particularly about parenting and working, which is always a really interesting topic, I think, for women in the organisation. I'm a mum, I've got 2 teenagers. You know, I absolutely get it in terms of, you know, what you go through right after you have a baby and are looking to come back into work, and then all of the challenges that you go through, you know, through starting school and going to secondary school and teenagers and all of that piece. So some really great conversations about what that looks like as well. And then we're thinking about, where do we broaden that out? What's the intersection, particularly with ethnicity in the organisation? We recently had some individuals from our REACH network, so our Race, Ethnicity and Cultural Heritage group, who came to ExCo and talked to us about their experiences in the organisation, and it was so powerful to hear that as an ExCo, and really gave us the opportunity to reflect on where we could change things, and where we could go back, not just at policies, but ways of working. You know, how does that impact, and how can we bring that to life more for people in the organisation, and say, you know, you might have just got that person's name wrong. You know, that's not okay. You really need to think about what that is and make the effort to find out how to pronounce it properly. That's really important. So we've wanted to bring some of that back into the organisation as well.
Yeah, because as you've rightly said, like ethnicity, and then we've touched on social mobility as an example, as another one.
Absolutely.
Particularly doing some of the specialised roles, which I appreciate you would have in the business. It's that academic background, or what if people haven't had access to that, or the funds?
So important. And we are delighted this year, for the first time, we're going to have our first interns through the 10,000 Black Interns programme. So we're going to have 5 interns join us over the summer, and it's exactly designed to do that, to open up an opportunity in financial services for people who might not have had that access or that traditional schooling or background or education, to make it seem like that's something that they would either be interested in or have access to. So we are really excited about that opportunity as well.
Yeah, some really good policies there and things being put into practice. Like, what impact would you say they have had on the business so far?
So we're still early doors, and I think with anything in that diversity space, you've got to give it time to bed in. But we've seen really interesting impacts in terms of our inclusivity scores in our surveying are looking really strong, and people are generally reporting that they feel like they can come to work and be themselves and expect to have that support. So that is obviously the piece that we're monitoring. We want to see those scores continue to get better and better. What I really want to be able to do is to get better data, to get that real people insight data, so that I can track, the movement of our women through the organisation, and to see what the impact is and kind of where the fallout is. Do we struggle to get people back from maternity leave? Do we struggle to attract people who are looking for flexible working? Yeah. And those are the pieces now where we have to bring together, as often is in HR, multiple different systems to talk to each other, to then create that kind of powerful people data and analytics. So that is one of our big focuses for this year, is to say, if we are going to have the insights, we need to get all of this data together to tell us things.
How do you measure it and then look at the outcomes?
Absolutely.
Interesting. You've talked a lot about what Oodle are clearly doing very well, and others that are being implemented. Throughout your career prior to Oodle, what have you experienced, or what changes have you seen maybe in D&I as an example of, or shifts mentality and how
absolutely.
That's been adopted?
I think for those of us who sort of entered the workforce in the early 2000s, we've probably seen that really big shift where it was something that felt occasionally like it was a token gesture, through to something that now has really massive commitment behind it, and where people genuinely see that there is a business advantage to having a diverse workforce, and that it's not something that's just being driven by women either. We have incredibly powerful and valuable allies in the men in our organisation as well, and not just around gender, but also to see people taking on sponsorship and leadership roles in our diversity network, so around ethnicity and neurodiversity and mental health. It's really great to see people coming together to do that, and that wouldn't have existed 10, 15 years ago, to see people really step up and think, I want to lead in this space, outside of my day job, whatever that is, I want to take a role in this space. So it's very much moved from lip service to something that people can see, that there's science and data behind it and things to believe in, into something that now feels quite concrete. But having said that, the size of the challenge is still huge. So we still have lots of barriers for diverse people in organisations in general, things that we really need to break through and talk about more, and more support that we need to give. even just in disclosure, one of the things a lot of organisations struggle with, and we did at first, was just getting people to tell us, what diverse characteristics they might have. So we've tried really hard to build more trust with our colleagues to say, here's why we want to know this about you, and here's what we're going to do with it if you trust us with that information. So that is, that's also still a hurdle to knowing if you're improving. To know if you're improving, you have to fully know who's in your organisation.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I completely agree with you about like a whole organisation embodying and really practicing it, rather than it being maybe in TradFi or a couple of decades ago, it being almost like that tick box.
Absolutely.
Exercise.
Yeah.
It's got to come from the top down. It's the tone from the top, isn't it?
It's the tone from the top, absolutely. And if you have an exec team who really live it and breathe it, then I think that is the only way that you start to see a real movement behind it further down in the organisation.
Yeah. And what we've experienced, and myself from speaking with other ladies like yourself in leadership and exco roles, it's a story then, and it's relatable for either younger ladies or others as well, from a DE&I perspective, coming through and coming into the business and then progressing with the business. It provides much more of a relatable journey, almost.
Absolutely.
Inspirational and aspirational. Which is what you want. And if you've got women in expo, or a balance from ethnicity and religious point of view as well, you tend to find that it attracts more people as well.
Absolutely. We want to create that space where we say, you can come and join us and you can thrive here, because here's examples of people who are here and are thriving, who we trust and believe can take on those kinds of leadership roles. And I think importantly as well to then also say, and that's outside some of the roles that were more traditionally female as well. I mean, I'm a female CPO. HR itself is a very female dominated profession. And if you look at my team, that is still true of my team. We are female dominated, and they're just so wonderful. I can't speak highly enough of them, but so powerful to now see so many more women coming into some of those more non-traditional roles, to see them in commercial roles, to see them in operational roles and technology roles. Those are the things that I really want to champion, and women in technology and software and coding roles, it's so important to be able to see that talent coming through.
And that's why we do this. It's a platform to really highlight and celebrate and give more visibility of it. I think really is the main message that we wanted to get across.
Absolutely, because I still think that FS is not well understood in terms of the kinds of careers that you can have within a financial services organisation. So being able to do this and to also get out and talk to people and bring interns into the organisation, those are ways of opening it up and saying, there's all kinds of roles within financial services. It's about finding the right one for you. Could be marketing, HR, finance, could be operations, could be commercial, so many different routes.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about the kind of different routes and those kind of inspirational stories, what advice would you give, Heidi, to younger females in Oodle generally, or even to your younger self?
Yeah, I think, and probably this gets said a lot because I still hear about it a lot when I'm talking to younger women in my organisation and in my team, is self-belief and self-confidence. Imposter syndrome is real, and we all suffer from it to a greater or lesser extent. But being able to recognise it, sometimes we give it a name. We do that quite a lot. We can kind of talk about what's she on about today? What's she talking about? It's something that you kind of have to acknowledge and then say, but that's that's not me, that's not necessarily real, that's just what that voice is saying today. So I'm going to put that to one side and I'm going to back myself. You know, because ultimately, if you back yourself and you get yourself into that situation, you'll learn through it.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a real sense of wanting to go in perfect, and you can't. So it's, you know, it's backing yourself and saying, I think I can do this. You know, I'm going to make some mistakes and I'm going to learn some things along the way, and that's all right. And you get yourself to the table, get yourself into the situation, and you'll learn and you'll grow. So that is an awful lot of what I end up talking about when I'm talking to younger people. And I also point out the fact that every role I did, I said to myself, this is it. Like, I am not taking on a bigger role than this. This is the end. I'm not doing it to myself. Like, this is the limit. And then there's just that little voice that goes, maybe give it a go. Maybe give it a go. Go
Why
on,
not?
go for it. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Why not you? You know, why not you? So that I think is the main thing that I would say. You know, why not you? And back yourself into that situation and let go of the idea of having to be perfect.
I think that's a really, really key message, and thank you for sharing your story.
It's my pleasure.
And a very powerful message at the end, and I hope it resonates.
Thank you very much. Thank you.